always electric, especially on a game day like today. Ocean Casino Resorts only. Ocean Gallery, Bar, Book, and Games in Atlantic City, where we are standing by for the JAKIB Media pregame show. Mark Farzetta along with Seth Joyner and Mr. Derek Gunn himself, and just like all NFL teams throughout the week, showing their support for Damar Hamlin, the safety from the Buffalo Bills. We are showing our Bills colors today on set, as our lighting indicates. A continued progress to the Bills' safety, of course. Eagles, what would be an Eagles season, gentlemen, without just a touch of drama, saving their worst brand of football for the final at least 2 to 3 weeks, finalizing the season. But they can wrap things up despite an 8-0 start, a 13-1 season by the time they entered Week 16. The Eagles are making the final week of the season matter, unfortunately. Win today, it's simple. You're the top seed in the NFC. They've been playing like that all season long, up until recently, but they can solidify their spot as the top spot in the NFC with a win today over the Giants. Lose, which I don't think any of us are thinking they're going to do today, especially with who the Giants are trotting out there on the football field. You could fall as far as 5th in the NFC standings. How are we feeling today, Seth, going into this final game of the season, assuming I'm pretty confident that the Eagles are going to wrap things up today?
Well, I'm very confident, in the fact that Jalen Hurts is playing. That, to me, that's the difference maker. You're getting some guys back, some guys slowly but surely. You're getting some guys healthy. But make no mistake about it, Jalen Hurts is going to be the reason why they get over the hump today. I just don't believe from a confidence standpoint that you could actually roll Gardner Minshew out there again this week after that performance last week and the effect that it would have on the rest of the football team. So I feel pretty confident that they'll get it done, along with the fact that the New York Giants are going to rest some of their starters, having already clinched, the number 6 spot. I think the Eagles just need to go out in the first half, take care of business, get it done, sit their starters after halftime, and, wait for the divisional round.
Yeah, Gunnar, I think most people feel like, yes, today is a win, but it's more of how much. Last I checked, it was 16.5-point favorites the Philadelphia Eagles were. Jalen Hurts coming back, obviously a huge impact on that line right there. So, Gunnar, healthy enough to play, healthy to play today. Where do you see Jalen Hurts, and how do you see him performing today?
Well, it's a do-or-die situation, and all hands on deck. Now, when I say do-or-die, the difference is being a 1 seed compared to being a 5 seed. And the Eagles, they should not be in this situation. They had 2 opportunities to take care of this against the Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints, and they floundered in both occasions. So now you have to bring back all your guns. If the coach deems Jalen Hurts healthy enough to play, then I'm satisfied with that. But this is a team that has spoiled us all season long. They had done things so easily and so effortlessly in a lot of ways. We had just expected them to coast to the finish line. And unfortunately, now here we are, looking at the frontline players having to play a game, or at least a half of a game, they shouldn't even be in at this point of the season. But as you've heard me talk about time and time again throughout this season all year long, this has been one of the most unpredictable NFL seasons that I've ever had a chance to cover. I mean, from start to finish, 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 games every week, you sit there going, huh? You didn't expect this. And here we are looking at this Eagles team going, huh? They've got to play the starters in the 18th game of the season, because a 17th game of the season, because of what they didn't do the previous 2 weeks.
We were talking about before the show, Gunnar, about how fast this season has just flown by because they've really lacked drama. Right. And one of the things we can always depend on when it comes to an Eagles season is at least have a little touch of drama here and there. And like I said in the open, they have saved that for now.
So I asked somebody who in the know, is Jalen Hurts on a pitch count today, or will he play the game until you secure the win? And the answer I just got back a few moments ago, oh no, he's playing until we secure the win. Hopefully that's a lot sooner than later in this game.
Yeah, the Giants in this scenario, Seth, are really, I feel, handing the number 1 spot to the Philadelphia Eagles and saying, hey, like all season long, it's yours to lose in this situation. But what might be on some other people's minds with that already in the back pocket, obviously, yes, see the health of Jalen Hurts, see that he is back to 110%. He can do all the things he did before the injury took place. But the other part of this, is there any chance you think at this point he fights his way back into the MVP conversation to go up against Patrick Mahomes?
Well, if securing that win means he's only going to get a half of football, then he better throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think other than that, it's pretty much a done deal. Listen, I never thought or believed that, the NFL wanted Jalen Hurts to win the MVP anyway. And then Andy Reid coming out about 4 or 5 weeks ago making the assertion that, anyone else that, wins the MVP besides Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, come on, dude. This football team at that point in time had only lost one game. We all thought, because of the idiocy of some comments that people have made, Jalen Hurts is a system quarterback. He's doing what he's doing because of the rest of the team. And then we got Dallas, and then we got the Saints, and we found out that Jalen Hurts isn't a system quarterback, that he is the system, and that this whole team operates much more efficiently when he's on the field. I think we will all see that today. In light of that, you want to talk about who should be the MVP? In my opinion, if Jalen Hurts not only makes his offense better, but also makes his defense play better, is he not the MVP? Because Patrick Mahomes, listen, set the all-time, yards for passing in a season yesterday. Spreads the ball around the 8 wide receivers. All of those things are fine and dandy. But he's got so many weapons and coaches who are so creative, that his job is easy. And to add injury to insult, the defense is playing some really good football right now across the board. So, it's just a matter of how you want to look at it and who you really deem the most important player to be. I think that a season without Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs aren't the Chiefs. But yet and still, this magical season that the Philadelphia Eagles had, if Jalen Hurts isn't there for the majority of the games, if he misses half the season, the Eagles probably don't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, they're probably maybe with the way the defense have played this year, scratching at it with Gardner Minshew as their starter. I doubt it, but there's no way, like they are now, Gunner, a Super Bowl contender right now.
No. And it showed the last couple of games they played against the Saints and the Cowboys how valuable a Jalen Hurts is, not just to the offense, but the overall momentum of this team. And obviously this team won't go very far if Jalen Hurts is not under center for this team. But to add to what Seth was talking about when you talk about a Patrick Mahomes, the fact that he broke Drew Brees' record yesterday, the fact that he's thrown 41 touchdown passes this year, I'd be shocked if Patrick Mahomes doesn't get the MVP based on that. For whatever the case may be, and you know what, he's earned that respect for as young as he has been, getting to a Super Bowl, winning to a Super Bowl, winning an MVP. He has deserved every accolade he gets. But the league has this infatuation with the likes of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen like we've never seen before. And unfortunately, that weighs in to a lot of the decision-making when it comes down who indeed is the MVP of the league.
Understood. Now,
the one thing I would say is Drew Brees set the mark. Drew Brees won a Super Bowl. Drew Brees was a perennial All-Pro. Drew Brees has never been the MVP. So that kind of gives you an idea of, like you said, D-Gun, how the NFL how they fall in love with certain players and how certain players are looked upon and the stature and the projection that they want to have for certain players. You tell me, how can Drew Brees accomplish all those things and never be an MVP, yet Patrick Mahomes is in this conversation today? And if you're going to make it all about, you can't be all about the record, because their record is going to be no better than the Eagles' record, and Jalen missed 2 games. Flat out, Patrick Mahomes didn't play great football early in the season. They kind of righted the ship later on. I just want to throw that out there for food for thought.
No, absolutely. No, it's a point well worth making, of course. Now, aside from the MVP candidacy, when looking at Jalen Hurts, you can really look at his career as an odd career. When he gets picked, most people, I would venture to guess, most people were against the selection. Nothing against Jalen Hurts, but you had just signed Carson Wentz. You already had a franchise quarterback. So he really started things off here, not by his fault by any means, on a negative side of things with fans. Then he gets the opportunity to play. He shows a little bit of promise, very small, in the limited playing time he got when he took over for Carson Wentz. Then showed what he could do last year as a starting quarterback. We go through an entire offseason a year ago looking at Jalen Hurts and asking the question, Is he the guy? I don't think he could have. Now, still playoffs, still yet to be determined. But I don't think he could have had a regular season with more of an exclamation point on being the guy than he has this past season for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I want to ask you guys this question. When it comes to all the question marks he had surrounding him going into the offseason, what was the biggest question that he answered with his play this year, Gunner?
Could he read a defense? Could he go through progressions? Those were the two biggest issues. And he came out of the gate and he answered, he checked those boxes off real quick. And you're saying, okay, it's the first game of the season. They're playing the Detroit Lions, a team that has a subpar defense. Let's see as the season goes along. He has been consistent in those categories all season long. So those were the two big criteria, and he's answered them time and time again.
All right, so we're looking at reading a defense. Seth, what has he improved upon the most?
For me, it was, learning how to be a pro quarterback. I didn't feel like reading a defense and some of the intangibles that people had questions about were the real issue for Jalen. I felt like it was, could he improve his footwork in the pocket? Could he improve his accuracy? Could he improve his rhythm and timing? Because the difference between the college game and the pro game is throwing the ball on time and throwing it on rhythm. And if you do that, then your accuracy will go up because you're throwing to a spot and you're releasing the ball. When your wide receiver puts his foot in the ground at 9, that ball is out of your hand now. So when he turns at 10, the ball is on him. Could he make those adjustments? And the last one was finally being in a system for more than 1 year, for the first time in 6 years of football for him. How would he react to that? And I think he took this offense, he owned this offense, he created some things in this offense for this offensive staff that they probably didn't believe that would be available to him. I think he has evolved even this coaching staff into a better coaching staff because of his improvement and his development as a young quarterback.
First time he was in the same system back-to-back years since his father was the coach in high school. So it had definitely been a minute for Jalen Hurts. Other injury news, we'll get more from Jalen Hurts when we talk to John McMullen from Lincoln Financial Field a little bit later in this segment. But, gentlemen, I also want to ask you, Gunner, most notably here, when we talk about the injury factor for the Eagles, C.D. Deuce gets activated off IR. Robert Quinn, obviously not a big contributor when he was originally traded for by the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman. But when we look at the injury situation now, also Josh Sweat, when we see what happens with him in long term, what are you expecting from those three players as the season continues?
Well, CJ is basically getting himself back into game shape. Now, I don't know how much he's going to play in this game today, but obviously he needs some reps to get back into game shape in that regard. It's been a long time coming. Anytime you're talking about lacerated kidneys and stuff like that, everybody heals so differently. You look at Andrew Luck, that contributed to him ending his career prematurely. These guys now that are coming back are about getting reps, getting your feet wet again to get ready for what's to come. The key is for Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and Jonathan Gannon to control X amount of reps for them to not overuse them. If anybody needs the reps, it is Robert Quinn. If you go back to early in the season, I told you that my people in Chicago had told me they let Robert Quinn go because they felt that he had run his course. And the fact that he had 18 sacks in 2021 was a direct correlation for having Khalil Mack on the other side. Lo and behold, basically Robert Quinn, since he's been here, has been in the witness protection program. So now he's got to redeem himself in some ways because they're going to need him in that rotation in the second season.
All right, so Robert Quinn there, C.D. Deuce there. Josh Sweat, what's the latest on him?
Well, Josh Sweat is a wait-and-see situation. You don't need to put him back in there today. Now, he had like a head-neck injury. There's no need to put him out there in a game like this today. If they secure that number 1 seed, now he gets an additional 2 weeks to get back, and I fully expect him to be back by then. As far as Avonte Maddox goes, when they put the term serious toe injury attached to that, that tells me more likely than not, I wouldn't expect to see him back again this season.
I'm right there with you. Seth, I do want to ask you about game shape because there's obviously the conditioning shape and then there's game shape. How long do you think it takes a guy like C.D. Deuce to be able to come back from the injury he had and get back into the swing of things?
Well, a lot depends on, how much he's been doing. They just opened his practice window, this week. But if you're going to open his practice window this week and then activate him today, that tells me that he's been pretty busy, over the last couple of weeks. You're not just going to throw him out there. And then again, this is a different NFL, man. These guys, very few of these guys play 100% of the plays in a football game anymore. You've kind of worked some of these younger guys into the rotation, and they've kind of gotten their feet wet. Kayvon Wallace is playing better. Obviously, Reed Blankenship has played better. Even Josiah Scott, for that matter, is starting to kind of get his feet under him. And to D. Gunn's point, a couple of weeks ago, he seems to play better when he knows that he's going to be the starter rather than the guy that comes off the bench. So I don't know. Do we look at C.D. Deuce to be the guy who comes in and takes over that slot position because that's really his natural spot? Even with him back, I think that the Eagles operate at a deficit because, in my opinion, the most important guy in that pass coverage on the back end is Avonte Maddox. And the way he walked off the field with his toe turned up in the air, the way it was turned up, and I've had 3 toe surgeries, and it was one of the primary reasons why I called it a day. I mean, physically, I still had maybe 2 or 3, years left in me. But listen, man, when your feet hurt, when your toes are banged up, it's the hardest thing in the world because you play a game, you don't recover till Thursday or Friday, then you got to do it again, and it's just this cycle that you go through. So to D. Gunn's point, I'd be shocked to see Avonte Maddox come back, but I think that in the Dallas game, that was the turn. When he went out of that game, all the play calling changed. We went from an aggressive defense to an extremely passive defense. He is a major part of what they do, and without him, you can expect for Jonathan Gannon to continue to be a little more on the passive side unless we see something out of one of these young guys that he feels comfortable about. Because, again, I've defended Jonathan Gannon since the Dallas game because I know as a defensive coordinator, you're limited in what you can call by how much you trust the players that are on the field to perform and do what it is that you need them to do. If you don't have confidence in Josiah Scott, you're not going to put him in compromising positions because what's their mantra? Keep it in front of you. Don't let anything get behind you.
Seth Joyner, huge Jonathan Gannon fan.
I don't know about that.
You know what? We're going to keep the laughs coming and hopefully some good times coming as well. Eagles, we've known for a while, are in the playoffs. Here's how you can get into the stadium with those playoff-bound Eagles.
Hey Philly, it's Tom Giordano from Ponley Hockey Giordano. Be sure to follow Ponley Hockey on Instagram for your opportunity to win free Eagles home game tickets for the rest of the season. You heard that right. We're giving away free tickets all season long. And guess what? We're going to give away tickets to the playoffs and the Super Bowl. So make sure you're following us. And as always, thanks for watching the Ponley Hockey Postgame Show.
Welcome back, Mark Farzetta, Seth Joyner, and Derek Gunn. John McMullen will be joining us from Lincoln Financial Field coming up in just a second. Now, is it as simple to continue the conversation about what the Eagles could be doing defensively? Is it as simple as Reed Blankenship stays at the safety position and you do use Chauncey Gardner-Johnson there at the slot spot so you don't have Josiah Scott in there as well?
Well, that's a possibility. But CJ has not played that slot position all season long. They've had him on the back end. Do you want to reroute him at this point of the season? Are you that confident in Blankenship? Because he had the one good game, and then he had the next game that was not so good. So, your back umbrella is the last line of defense. And you want the best possible players you can have on the back of that defense. CJ is better on the back end. For as much as he's played the slot in his career, in this defense this season, he has been better for this team on the back end of that defense. Seth just talked about it. If Josiah Scott has known all week long he's going to start, I expect Josiah Scott to play a better brand of football. Is it up to Avonte Maddox status? No, but it is good enough to get the job done. When you have the kind of talent they have around him in the trenches, on the linebacking position, and at the corners and the other safety, a lot of times you have enough pieces to the equation to cover up any deficiencies one guy might have. So in this case, I would put CJ on the back end and keep Josiah Scott in there if we knew for a fact he has been practicing all week.
There is one name that we left out when we were talking about injuries for the Eagles, and that goes right there with Lane Johnson, the Eagles all-pro right tackle. You had Jack Driscoll filling in last week, who I thought did a serviceable job there, had some struggles, but overall played well in that game. Some of the rumors that have come out are that if the Eagles are going to miss Lane Johnson for more than just a couple weeks, and if they are going to miss him into the playoffs, do you then start to attack the offensive line by a different trait? Do you start moving the left tackle, a guy like, for instance, Andre Dillard, moving him to left tackle and taking Jordan Mailata and moving him to the right tackle spot? Has Jack Driscoll so far done enough, Seth, to stay at that right tackle spot while Lane Johnson is out?
Listen, I can't have my right tackle being pushed back into the quarterback when I have to throw the football. Now, Lane hasn't given up a sack, and I don't know how many games now. I think that, the one thing that Jalen gives you is that when he feels that pressure, he has the ability to get away where Gardner can't go anywhere because he's reluctant to run the football. I said it, when Lane got hurt. I said, he's going to get a steady diet of Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan plays all up and down that Saints defensive line. He primarily lined up on Jack Driscoll all game last week, okay? And then you turn around and you got Kayvon Thibodeau today. I don't know how much he's going to play, but I can assure you that he's not going to line up on Jordan Mailata that much. He's going to line up on the other side. So as you progress throughout the, once you get to the playoffs, defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators are looking for those weaknesses. So if I can take my best pass rusher and move him over on your worst offensive tackle, and you're not going to put a tight end there, you're not going to chip with a back, you're just going to ask this guy to kick all game long. That's the thing that blows my mind. I mean, come on. If you're going to put the guy there, he's a backup. By nature, he's a guard. You ask him to play tackle. He's showing you that he can't sit down and take the bull rush, and you don't give him any help, yet you want to throw the ball the entire first half. I'm like, that kind of stuff makes no sense to me. At least chip him with a back. The back 9 times out of 10 is your safety valve. So at least chip him with the back and give him some help.
Plain and simple, Jack Driscoll is a better offensive tackle moving forward than he is setting up and setting back. Eagles played right into the Saints' hands last week. I still can't get over the fact they ran the ball only 15 times. And they exposed Jack Driscoll, and the Saints deliberately put Cam and Jordan on that side because of the advantage there. Even though we're playing the Giants' backups today, I would expect Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale to do something similar. Who's going to be playing today that we can get an advantage on and make things a little bit harder for Jalen Hurts back there? To me, Jack Driscoll is auditioning for playing time in the postseason. If he plays anywhere near like he played against the Saints, I fully expect him to take Mailata, flip him to the right side, and finally bring Andre Dillard in on the left side.
So he did not pass the test last week.
He did not pass the test last week.
Okay.
No.
Best case scenario is that Lane miraculously heals up enough to get us through the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And listen, and he's even when he comes back, he's going to get tested. They're going to be running games and all kind of stuff. Nothing wrong, nothing against his technique and his ability to do what he does, because in my opinion, like everybody else's, he's the best right tackle in all of pro football. But when you got an injury to your groin, they're going to give you everything they can to get you moving your hips and turning and moving as much as you can. They're not going to give you a guy that's just going to run straight down you. Right. They're going to be trying to get upfield. They're going to be running TE stunts. They're going to be doing everything they can to try to get him to tweak that groin so they can get him out of the game and get Jack Driscoll just go back in the game. All
right, for more on the Eagles-Giants matchup, let's head to Lincoln Financial Field, talk to our NFL insider for the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, for those watching here on JAKIB Media as well as 6abc.com. John's brought to us by Thrive Financial Services. John, Jalen Hurts today. Gunnar talked about it earlier. Are we looking at a pitch count today? What can we expect from the Eagles quarterback?
Well, I think they hope there's a pitch count, because I think you hope you get out of here with, the ability to sit some starters and sit some key players, because the Giants don't need to win this game, and they're going to take the tack of not playing their key players. So, you don't have to go back too far, guys, to see this team dominated the Giants at full strength. There's no reason they shouldn't do that today against the backups. So I think they're hopeful that everybody's on a pitch count. But certainly Jalen Hurts with that shoulder injury, he's going to be on a pitch count when it comes to the running game. I can tell you that. I don't think the throwing aspect of it people have focused on that, and I don't know why. I think he's fine from a throwing perspective, but they don't want him taking extra hits on that shoulder.
John, I'm glad you mentioned the proverbial running game. A running game we thought they would establish against the Saints, which they never did. A poor Saints run defense. Here we're looking at a Giants run defense who's going to be playing a lot of subs, giving up 145 yards a game against one of the better running football teams in the National Football League. But as we sit here right now, are you confident that that's the game plan, to run the football and to keep Jalen from taking those unnecessary hits?
Well, I do think the Eagles are going to be cautious with Jalen Hurts. The bigger question to me is, how cautious do they have to be with Miles Sanders? Last week, a lot of people were upset that Miles didn't run the football a lot, certainly early in the game. Now, there were two parts to that, but obviously they weren't effective offensively, so they had the 4 consecutive 3-and-outs, so they were off the field really quickly. But Miles is dealing with a knee injury. He was wearing a bulky brace. So, somebody pretty high up admitted he was on a pitch count last week. So that kind of explains the disconnect on partially that. Now, the New York Giants are in town. You guys are at Ocean. Put some money on Boston Scott scoring a touchdown. That's probably going to happen. Kenny Gainwell. So when you talk about the running game, Miles might be on a pitch count too, but I do think, they'll want to run the football. It just might be more Boston Scott, more Kenny Gainwell.
John, I saw some footage this week of Miles in training camp without the knee brace on. So I'm kind of wondering how much of a pitch count he's really on if you're not practicing with the knee brace on opposed to playing with it, because, you got to get used to that thing. I've played with it before. It is one of the most uncomfortable things, to try to get through a game with.
He played with it last week. So he practiced with it last week. He did practice with it.
Okay.
He told me coming up to the game that he hoped to ditch it for the game. He hoped he was able to ditch it for the game. He wasn't able to do that. So I assume, I didn't talk to him about it this week, but I assume he wants to ditch it again, because you're right. I mean, that's uncomfortable to play with, especially when you're not used to it.
John, I think the other thing is, how the way this offense is structured, how does this coaching staff mete out how much Jalen Hurts actually runs opposed to how much they protect him? Because let's just be honest, this is a read option / RPO offense. And the defense, more than the coaching staff, dictates how much the quarterback actually runs the ball. And I think that's the thing that people miss sometimes. Those 2 games this year, I believe it was the first game against Detroit and the Chicago game, the 17 carries in both of those games. I'm not seeing that the coaches are calling 17 call plays for Miles. For Jalen. Some of it is he's scrambling. A lot of it is an RPO. It's the read that he's making, and all season long he's made the right read in keeping the football. So how do the Eagles protect him this way? What part of that offense is constructed in a way where you take the read option away and Jalen Hurts is as effective as we need him to be today?
Well, he probably isn't as effective as he normally is. But the key part is he's more effective than the alternative. You saw it kind of last year when he hurt the ankle, and he came back, and it was the Washington game where he only ran it twice. Now, what you do is you take the zone read off the table. So instead of zone read, where Jalen's reading the edge player and often makes the right decision by pulling the football and keeping it in himself, you don't give him that option. You turn it into a traditional handoff. Now, it might look like a zone read to a fan, but if you take the option off the table for the quarterback and say just hand it off, he just hands it off. The Eagles did that last year to protect Jalen with the ankle. I think they'll do it again this year to protect him a little bit. But you're also right, Seth. Those 17 carries in Chicago, there were 6 design runs, according to Shane Steichen. So, you know, people see that number 17 after the game. You got to take, in that case, you got to take out the kneel downs at the end of the game in victory formation. I think they had the quarterback sneaks and all the zone reads where, all right, Jalen might pull it, but if the defender does something else, he's going to hand the football out. So from the hand the football off. So from the Eagles' perspective, there are only 6 design runs, but he ended up carrying it 17 times. So some of that is obfuscated. People don't look into the context, but they want to protect him. They don't want him taking hits on that shoulder. And let's be honest, if they took care of business, Jalen Hurts wouldn't even be playing in this game. I'm very confident in saying that.
No, I think most of us would agree with you on that, John. Now, there's no doubt the Eagles are going to miss Avonte Maddox for however long he is going to be out. And obviously, the Eagles have really missed not having Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back there as their safety. Now that he's coming back, how much do you expect him to play in today's game, and in what role do you put him in?
Well, you put him in the same role he had before. I'm a little surprised, to be honest. That one surprised me. I thought Robert Quinn would be activated because the Eagles need the body with Josh Sweat being out. I expected the Eagles to wait until the playoffs. Maybe they want to start that process of knocking the rust out. But similar to what I said with CJ, yeah, I think they want all the key players to be on a pitch count in this particular game, and we'll see how it shakes out. But as far as the role, yeah, I mean, he still leads the NFL in interceptions. I mean, he was doing pretty well in his role. So you stick him back opposite Marcus Epps, and, you know, 3rd and 30 in Dallas, that's not happening if he's back there. So you feel very comfortable doing some different things. And that's one of the things where Josiah Scott, for instance, at nickel corner played very well last week. But he has up games, he has down games. Same thing with Reed Blankenship, who's done a wonderful job as an undrafted rookie. But there's some inconsistency there. You're just more consistent. You feel better if you're Jonathan Gannon. If Avonte Maddox and CJ are on the field, the Eagles are just a much better team. So it's very important to get CJ back in the mix.
Hey, John, how much do you think we'll see a CJ and a Robert Quinn in a game like this today? You know, you're talking about a lacerated kidney. You know, that's a tricky thing. You know, Robert Quinn's coming off an injury as well. You think it'll be based on down and situation and, of course, the flow of the game, or maybe
well, certainly Robert. I mean, you know, he's going to be in that sort of, you know, 4th role when it comes to edge rusher. They need some reps. And, you know, hopefully he had arthroscopic knee surgery. So hopefully he's a little bit better coming off that, a little bit healthier. And, you know, if you go back to last year, and that's why the Eagles made this trade, D-Gun, I think he had 18.5 sacks with Chicago last year. I mean, you can imagine if it works out to pull that kind of fastball out in a big situation when it's 3rd and long in the playoffs or something like that, if Robert Quinn is healthy. So I'm interested to see how he looks out there. As far as CJ, yeah, like I said, I didn't expect to see CJ until the postseason, to be honest. I thought they'd be really, really cautious with him. And I'm going to be interested to see how much they use him. Maybe the thought process is, look, you're going to get the number 1 seed. You're going to get a bye. If you don't, it's a disaster against Davis Webb and company. You're going to have that extra week, and then you start talking about more rust for CJ. So that's kind of where I think the Eagles are going, because I'm a little bit surprised by it.
You know, John, I want to talk a little bit about Robert Quinn, but I think the biggest story right now, in light of how he played last week, is Jack Driscoll and how the Eagles feel about his protection last week in the absence of Lane Johnson. Teams seem hell-bent on getting 5 out into the route rather than leaving a tight end in to help out a backup tackle versus a premier pass rusher, or put the back over there and chip. Any kind of indication or any thoughts on, you know, how the Eagles might handle that? Because I think that Jack Driscoll gets a steady diet of Kayvon Thibodeau today.
Well, I don't know how much the Giants are going to play Kayvon Thibodeau. I think they're going to be in the same situation. I mean, there's certain guys who have to play, right? Because you have only the game day roster. Everybody says it's going to be a preseason environment. Well, in the preseason, you have 90 players. Here, you only have 47 to work with. So some guys got to play. Kayvon's going to be in that conversation, certainly for the Giants, but I do think they want to limit him. They already ruled out Azeez Ojulari, who's dealing with some injury issues. So that's their two main edge rushers, and they're more convinced to get him ready for Minnesota next week. So I think part of that will be self-correcting, and that the Giants aren't going to play their key players that much. And the other part is you are right. If I am going to criticize this staff, and I criticize both sides, offense, defense, the next man up mentality, and you know this as a player, Seth, I get why coaches have to act like that. They have to be optimistic by nature. They have to count on reserves. But there's a reason backups are backups. And you as a coach, you can talk about next man up all you want. But when it's Josiah Scott instead of Avonte Maddox, when it's Reed Blankenship instead of CJ, when it's Jack Driscoll instead of Lane Johnson, you got to adjust a little bit. In other words, you can't just expect Jack Driscoll to be Lane Johnson. Nick has said at least 10 times during this season, that's the best right tackle in the world. Well, if he's the best right tackle in the world, and he is, by the way, you are going to know Jack Driscoll isn't Lane Johnson. And yeah, occasionally he needs a little bit more help. So I think that's a valid criticism of this staff on both sides of the ball.
John, being that the Giants aren't playing their starters in this one, at least a lot of their notable starters, I'm going to ask you for two predictions. One, obviously the final score, and two, will Jalen Hurts play in the second half?
33-16, I think the Eagles are going to win the game pretty easily. Will he play in the second half? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's going to be – I'm going to say it's in hand by the start of the second half.
All right, so those 16 points are obviously just the garbage time. It's garbage time, end of the game. Just throwing up points. John McMullen, thank you so much for joining us from Lincoln Financial Field.
Thank you, guys.
John McMullen brought to us there by Thrive Financial Services. Go to thrivefinancialservices.com now and get your retirement playbook. We'll be back with more Eagles-Giants pregame here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel in a few.